The general mocked her, until he saw the 3,200-meter sniper badge on her uniform. The laughter started before she even stepped out of the transport truck. It rolled across the dusty military compound like distant thunder. Dozens of soldiers stood in formation beneath the blazing afternoon sun. Engines rumbled nearby. Helicopter rotors chopped the air in the distance. The smell of diesel fuel, gun oil, and desert sand hung heavy over the base. And at the center of it all stood a young woman carrying a weathered rifle case. Nobody knew her. Nobody expected her. And the moment the general saw her, he smirked. "You're the replacement sniper?" he asked. The soldiers exchanged glances. Some chuckled. Others looked away, embarrassed. The woman remained silent. Then the general noticed something stitched beneath her unit patch. A small black badge. Simple. Unremarkable. Until he read the number. 3,200 meters. And suddenly, the laughter stopped. Every sound on the base seemed to disappear. Because every sniper in the world knew exactly what that badge meant. And the general realized he might have just insulted the most dangerous marksman he had ever met. The wind swept across Forward Operating Base Falcon as Staff Sergeant Evelyn Carter walked through the gate. She was 29 years old. Average height. Lean. Calm. Nothing about her appearance screamed elite soldier. No dramatic scars. No oversized muscles. No swagger. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years mastering things she never needed to brag about. Unfortunately, General Marcus Holloway judged people quickly. Especially new arrivals. Especially civilians turned soldiers. And especially women in combat roles. The general was a decorated veteran with 3 decades of service. He had survived wars across multiple continents. His reputation was legendary. So was his ego. When his operations officer handed him Evelyn's transfer paperwork, he barely glanced at it. "She's replacing Lieutenant Brooks?" Holloway asked. "Yes, sir. The sniper we lost last month?" "Yes, sir." The general laughed. "A woman?" The officer hesitated. "Sir, her record is exceptional." "I've heard that before." When Evelyn approached and saluted, Holloway looked her up and down. "You seem awfully small for this assignment." Several nearby soldiers smirked. Evelyn maintained eye contact. "Respectfully, sir, bullets don't care how big the shooter is." A few soldiers tried to hide their grins. The general's expression hardened. "You got jokes?" "No, sir." "Good." He turned away dismissively. "Let's hope you can shoot better than you talk." Evelyn simply nodded. "Yes, sir." For the next 2 weeks, rumors spread through the base. Nobody knew much about her. Her personnel file was heavily restricted. Most of her previous deployments were classified. The few details available sounded unbelievable. Long-range interdiction specialist. Counter-sniper operations. Mountain warfare expert. Multiple combat commendations. Confirmed eliminations redacted. That last part fueled endless speculation. Meanwhile, Evelyn kept to herself. She trained. Observed. Listened. While other soldiers spent evenings in recreation tents, she studied wind charts. Terrain maps. Atmospheric pressure reports. She spent hours cleaning her rifle with almost ritual precision. Many soldiers found her strange. Others found her intimidating. The general found her annoying. Because she never tried to impress him. One morning he visited the sniper range. Several teams were conducting qualification exercises. Targets stood at 800 meters. Difficult for average shooters. Routine for professionals, the general watched through binoculars. One sniper missed, another hit low. Then Evelyn stepped into position. She settled behind her rifle. Breathed. Waited. The range officer gave the signal. Crack. Bullseye. Crack. Bullseye. Crack. Bullseye. 5 consecutive center impacts. The general folded his arms. Not bad. The range officer raised an eyebrow. Not bad. Anyone can get lucky. The officer said nothing. Evelyn heard every word. She ignored it. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Intelligence reports revealed a hostile insurgent commander operating deep inside a mountainous region near the border. He had evaded capture for years. Every attempt to eliminate him had failed. His forces had ambushed supply convoys, destroyed villages, killed civilians. And recently, they had begun targeting military reconnaissance teams. Command authorized a high-priority mission. The target would be vulnerable for only a few hours. A strike team was assembled immediately. General Holloway personally oversaw the operation. The mission briefing room buzzed with tension. Satellite images illuminated giant screens. Red markers covered the mountains. The operations officer pointed to the target location. Observation post here. Another marker appeared. Enemy camp here. Then another. Estimated distance from firing position to target, 3,187 meters. The room fell silent. Someone laughed nervously. That's impossible. Another soldier nodded. No sniper can make that shot. The officer glanced toward Evelyn. She remained expressionless. The general noticed. You got something to say, Sergeant? Evelyn studied the map. The shot is possible. The room erupted. Several soldiers exchanged shocked looks. The general actually laughed. You serious? Yes, sir. At over 3 kilometers? Yes, sir. With mountain crosswinds? Yes, sir. The general leaned forward. And you think you can hit him? Evelyn looked directly at the target marker. I know I can. The room went silent again. For a moment nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The confidence wasn't arrogance. That made it even more unsettling. The general shook his head. We'll use drones. The weather won't allow it. We'll use air support. Cloud cover will block visual confirmation. The operations officer quietly cleared his throat. She's correct, sir. The general looked irritated. The officer continued. If conditions remain unchanged, a sniper shot may be the only viable option. Silence. Then Holloway sighed heavily. Fine. He pointed at Evelyn. You miss, this operation fails. Understood. You get one chance. Understood. And if you're wrong? I'm not wrong, sir. For the first time, the general didn't have a response. The strike team deployed before dawn. Snow covered the mountains. Temperatures plunged below freezing. Wind screamed across rocky ridges. The journey took nearly 18 hours. Every step felt like a battle. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air became. Soldiers struggled beneath heavy equipment. Yet Evelyn moved steadily. Patiently. Methodically. As if she'd walked those mountains 100 times before. By sunset they reached the designated firing position. A narrow shelf carved into the mountainside. The enemy compound sat nearly 2 miles away. Tiny. Barely visible. The target appeared smaller than a grain of rice through the spotting scope. Several soldiers stared in disbelief. One whispered. No way. Another shook his head. That's insane. Even General Holloway looked uncertain. The conditions were horrific. Wind speed fluctuated constantly. Temperature shifted every few minutes. Air density varied across multiple valleys. Any one factor could push a bullet several meters off target. Combined, the shot bordered on impossible. Yet Evelyn seemed calm. Almost peaceful. She assembled her rifle. Checked every component twice. Measured atmospheric pressure. Recorded humidity. Calculated bullet spin drift. Coriolis effect. Elevation changes. Wind vectors. Then she began writing numbers in a notebook. The general watched. "What are you doing?" "Building the firing solution." "For one shot." "For the only shot." Hours passed. Darkness covered the mountains. Then dawn arrived. The target finally emerged. The insurgent commander walked through the camp surrounded by armed guards. The observation team confirmed identity. Positive. No doubt. Mission authorized. Every soldier watched Evelyn. Nobody spoke. She settled behind the rifle. Her breathing slowed. The world narrowed. The mountain disappeared. The cold disappeared. The fear disappeared. Only math remained. Only discipline. Only the shot. Through the scope she saw the target moving. Wind shifted. She waited. The target stopped. Wind shifted again. She waited. The general checked his watch. Seconds felt like hours. Then suddenly Evelyn spoke. "Wind stabilizing." The spotter nodded. "Confirmed." 3 seconds. Everyone held their breath. 2. The mountain became silent. 1. Crack. The rifle thundered across the valley. The bullet began a journey lasting several seconds. Longer than most people could imagine. Across valleys. Through shifting winds. Over rising air currents. Past jagged cliffs. Nearly 2 miles. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The spotter tracked the impact. And then. Hit. The shout exploded across the mountains. Cheers erupted instantly. The target collapsed. Guards scattered. Panic spread through the compound. Mission accomplished. 1 shot. One impossible shot. The general stood frozen. His face pale. His eyes locked on Evelyn. For the first time since meeting her. He looked genuinely humbled. Back at the base, the story spread like wildfire. Soldiers who weren't even part of the mission heard rumors within hours. Most didn't believe them. Until official confirmation arrived. Then the impossible became fact. 3,187 meters. Confirmed combat hit. Mission success. History made. A week later the entire base assembled for a ceremony. Rows of soldiers filled the parade ground. Flags snapped in the wind. The sun hung low over the horizon. General Holloway stood behind the podium. For once, he looked nervous. Evelyn stood nearby in full dress uniform. Still calm. Still quiet. Still refusing attention. The general cleared his throat. Throughout my career, I believed experience gave me the ability to judge people quickly. The crowd listened carefully. I thought I could look at a soldier and know exactly what they were capable of. He paused. Then looked directly at Evelyn. I was wrong. Complete silence. The admission shocked everyone. The general continued. When Staff Sergeant Carter arrived, I underestimated her. His voice softened. I judged appearance instead of ability. He turned toward the assembled troops. That mistake nearly prevented me from recognizing one of the finest soldiers I've ever served beside. The crowd erupted into applause. Evelyn looked uncomfortable. The general smiled. There's one thing I never noticed during our first meeting. He pointed toward her uniform. The audience followed his gesture. Many saw it for the first time. A small black badge. Simple. Modest. Almost hidden. Most people don't know what that badge means, the general said. It represents a verified 3,200-meter precision qualification. Gasps spread through the crowd. Even now, many soldiers were stunned. The general shook his head slowly. When I mocked her, that badge was sitting right in front of me. Laughter rolled through the formation. But this time it wasn't cruel. It was warm. Respectful. Human. The general stepped away from the podium. Then something unexpected happened. He saluted her. Not as a superior. But as a warrior honoring another warrior. The entire base watched. Evelyn hesitated. Then returned the salute. For a brief moment, nobody cared about rank. Or titles. Or reputation. Only respect. Only earned excellence. Months later, General Holloway retired from military service. During his final interview, a reporter asked a simple question. After 30 years of command, what's the most important lesson you've learned? The general thought for several seconds. Then smiled. There was a sniper I once underestimated. The reporter waited. The general looked toward the horizon. She taught me something every leader should remember. What was it? He answered quietly. The most dangerous person in the room is usually the one who doesn't need everyone to know it. Years passed. Stories about Staff Sergeant Evelyn Carter became military legend. Some details were exaggerated. Others remained classified. But one thing never changed. The lesson. Young recruits heard it during training. Officers repeated it during leadership courses. Veterans shared it around campfires and deployment tents. Never underestimate someone because of appearance. Never mistake quiet confidence for weakness. And never assume greatness announces itself loudly. Because sometimes the strongest warrior walks into the room carrying no ego at all. Only skill. Only discipline. Only purpose. And by the time the world realizes who they are, it's already too late to doubt them. Far away, in another mountain range, another mission awaited. Another impossible shot. Another life or death decision. Evelyn adjusted her scope and looked across the horizon. The wind whispered through the rocks. A faint smile crossed her face. Then she settled behind the rifle. Patient. Focused. Unshaken. Exactly where she belonged. And somewhere, if General Holloway could see her, he would probably smile too. Because the woman he once mocked had become the soldier he respected most. Not because she demanded respect. Not because she chased recognition. But because she earned it one impossible shot at a time. And that is a kind of greatness no rank can give. And no one can ever take away. The helicopter's blades faded into the distance as Evelyn Carter watched the mountains below disappear beneath a blanket of clouds. The mission had been a success. The target was gone. The strike team was safe. And for the first time in years, her name was being spoken across military bases thousands of miles apart. But Evelyn wasn't celebrating. She sat alone near the rear ramp, staring at nothing. Because she knew something most people didn't. The dangerous missions were never the ones that ended with a shot. The dangerous ones were the missions that started afterward. 3 weeks later, Forward Operating Base Falcon received an encrypted transmission from Strategic Command. The message carried the highest classification level. Only a handful of people on the base were authorized to read it. General Holloway was one of them. When he finished reading, his expression changed immediately. His operations officer noticed. "What is it, sir?" The general slowly folded the document. "We have a problem." What kind of problem? The worst kind. Hours later, Evelyn was summoned to headquarters. The briefing room was nearly empty. Only General Holloway and 2 intelligence officers were present. The atmosphere felt different. Heavy. Serious. Dangerous. The general pointed toward a satellite image projected on the wall. A remote valley appeared on the screen. Snow-covered peaks surrounded a hidden compound. At first glance it looked insignificant, then Evelyn noticed the security layout. The overlapping patrol routes. The observation towers. The anti-aircraft positions. The underground bunkers. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't an insurgent camp. No. The general's voice was grim. It's much worse. One intelligence officer stepped forward. 3 months ago, a deep-cover reconnaissance team disappeared in this region. Another image appeared. 6 soldiers. All highly trained. All officially listed as missing. We recently intercepted communications confirming they're alive. Evelyn studied their faces. What do they want? The room fell silent. The officer answered carefully. You. Evelyn looked up. What? The officer changed slides. A photograph appeared. A grainy image taken through a long-range scope. Evelyn froze. The picture showed her during the previous mission. Someone had been watching. Someone had seen the shot. Someone had survived. General Holloway folded his arms. The commander you eliminated wasn't working alone. A new photograph appeared. This time the room became colder. Even the general looked uncomfortable. The man in the image had steel-gray eyes and a scar running across his face. His expression was calm. Calculating. Predatory. This is Viktor Volkov. The name immediately sounded familiar. Not because of military briefings. Because of stories. Legends. Rumors. Volkov had once been one of the most feared military snipers in the world. Over 200 confirmed kills. Operations spanning multiple continents. Entire special operations teams had hunted him. None succeeded. Years ago he disappeared. Most intelligence agencies assumed he was dead. They were wrong. The officer continued. Volkov saw what happened during your mission. Evelyn remained silent. He believes you're the only sniper alive capable of matching him. The room fell quiet again. Then the general said the words nobody wanted to hear. He's challenging you. The next several days became a whirlwind of preparation. Unlike previous missions, this operation wasn't about eliminating a target. It was about rescuing 6 soldiers. And surviving a sniper who wanted Evelyn personally. That changed everything. Volkov wasn't emotional. He wasn't reckless. He was patient. Patient predators were always the most dangerous. General Holloway assigned the best personnel available. Special Forces operators. Reconnaissance experts. Combat medics. Drone specialists. Nobody complained. Because everyone knew the stakes. The rescue team deployed under cover of darkness. Snowstorms battered the mountains. Visibility dropped constantly. Temperatures plunged below zero. For most soldiers, the environment itself was an enemy. For Volkov, it was home. On the second night, they found evidence. A discarded observation post. Empty food wrappers. Spent brass casings. A hidden firing position. Evelyn examined the site carefully. Then she noticed something. A single cartridge placed intentionally on a rock. Not forgotten. Not dropped. Displayed. A message. The general studied it. What does it mean? Evelyn answered quietly. He's watching us. The general looked around uneasily. For the first time, the hunter felt hunted. The team pushed deeper into the mountains. Every ridge, every valley, every shadow felt dangerous. Nobody knew where Volkov was. That uncertainty wore on people. Sleep became difficult. Conversations became shorter. Nerves became sharper. 3 days later, disaster struck. The lead reconnaissance scout suddenly collapsed. Crack. The sound arrived a second later. Sniper fire. The team instantly dove for cover. Contact. Sniper. Find the shooter. Chaos erupted. Snow exploded around them. Radio traffic filled the air, but there was a problem. Nobody could locate the source. Volkov had fired from over 2,000 meters away. By the time they reacted, he was already gone. The wounded scout survived. Barely. But the message was clear. Volkov could kill any of them whenever he wanted. The fact that he hadn't meant something. He was playing with them, and everyone knew it. That night the rescue team gathered inside a temporary shelter. Nobody spoke much. The general finally broke the silence. He wants you. Evelyn nodded. Yes. Why? She looked toward the storm outside. Because he doesn't care about the rescue team. Then what does he care about? For several seconds she said nothing. Then. Legacy. The room became silent. She continued. Men like Volkov don't fear death. The general listened carefully. They fear being forgotten. The realization hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't about strategy. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't about military objectives. Volkov wanted one final duel. One final story. One final legend. And Evelyn had become part of it. 4 days later they finally located the prisoners. The hidden compound sat inside a narrow valley surrounded by cliffs. The rescue would be difficult. But possible. The problem was Volkov. Nobody knew where he was positioned. And until they found him, every soldier remained vulnerable. The assault began before sunrise. Explosions shattered the silence. Special forces operators breached defensive positions. Gunfire echoed across the valley. Smoke rose into the freezing air. The rescue team pushed forward. One bunker fell. Then another. Then another. Everything seemed to be working. Until Evelyn saw something. A flash. Far above. Nearly invisible. A scope lens reflecting sunlight. Volkov. 3 kilometers away. Perfect overwatch position. Perfect firing angle. And directly aimed at General Holloway. Time slowed. The general was issuing orders, completely unaware. Volkov adjusted his rifle. Evelyn knew exactly what would happen next. She had seconds. Maybe less. No time for warnings. No time for relocation. No time for debate. Only action. She dropped to one knee. Raised her rifle, calculated instinctively. Distance. Wind. Elevation. Temperature. Thousands of hours of training compressed into a heartbeat. The crosshair settled. Volkov fired. Evelyn fired. 2 rifles thundered simultaneously. The bullets crossed miles of frozen air. The general turned at the sound. Confused. Then. Volkov's bullet struck the radio antenna behind him. Missing by inches. At the same moment Evelyn's round smashed directly through Volkov's scope. The impact threw him backward. Silence followed. Then disbelief. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Finally a spotter shouted. Target down. The valley erupted with cheers. The rescue team secured the prisoners. Enemy resistance collapsed. And for the second time in a single year, Evelyn Carter had accomplished something many experts considered impossible. Hours later, the rescued soldiers boarded evacuation helicopters. Several were injured. All were exhausted. But alive. As the aircraft lifted off, General Holloway approached Evelyn. For a moment neither spoke. Then the general handed her something. A small wooden box. Evelyn opened it. Inside was a medal. The highest combat decoration authorized for the operation. She looked up. The general smiled. "You earned it." Evelyn closed the box. "I was just doing my job." The general laughed. Months earlier that answer would have annoyed him. Now it made perfect sense. Because that was who she was. Not someone chasing medals. Not someone chasing fame. Just a professional who understood responsibility. The helicopter rose above the mountains. Below them, snow-covered peaks stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Volkov's story had ended. The prisoners were coming home. And the team had survived. But the moment that stayed with General Holloway forever wasn't the rescue. Or the battle. Or even the impossible shot. It was something much simpler. As the sun rose over the mountains, he looked across the cabin and saw Evelyn sitting quietly by herself again. No celebration. No boasting. No victory speech. Just silence. The same silence she carried when she first arrived at the base. And suddenly he understood something. True greatness rarely announces itself. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't seek applause. It simply shows up when it matters most. Again. And again. And again. The general smiled to himself. Because years earlier he had looked at a quiet young sniper and seen weakness. Now he looked at her and saw something entirely different. A soldier whose courage couldn't be measured by rank. A warrior whose skill couldn't be measured by records. And a leader whose example would inspire generations long after both of them were gone. Outside the helicopter window, the first light of dawn painted the mountains gold. A new day was beginning. And somewhere beyond the horizon, another impossible mission was already waiting. For soldiers like Evelyn Carter. It always was. The medal sat untouched inside a wooden box. Weeks had passed since the rescue mission. The 6 soldiers had returned home. The news channels celebrated the operation. Military analysts called it one of the most remarkable rescue missions of the decade. And once again, Staff Sergeant Evelyn Carter avoided every interview request. She preferred silence. Unfortunately, silence never lasted long. Especially for people like her. One rainy evening, General Marcus Holloway sat alone inside his office reviewing retirement paperwork. Thunder rolled across the sky outside. The base was quiet. Most personnel had already gone home. Then his secure phone rang. A line almost nobody had access to. The general answered immediately. Holloway. The voice on the other end belonged to someone he hadn't heard from in years. His expression changed instantly. "Sir." The caller was a 4-star commander from Strategic Operations Command. One of the most powerful military leaders in the country. And judging by his tone, something had gone very wrong. "We need Carter." The general frowned. "What happened?" Several seconds passed. Then came the answer. "A satellite disappeared." Holloway blinked. "What?" "A military surveillance satellite." The general sat upright. Satellites didn't simply disappear. Not modern ones. Not classified ones. Not without triggering global panic. Destroyed? No. Hacked? No. Then where is it? The voice became grim. That's the problem. Nobody knew. 2 days later, Evelyn found herself standing inside a facility she didn't even know existed. The building was buried deep beneath a mountain. Security checkpoints seemed endless. Armed guards occupied every corridor. Every door required multiple clearances. This wasn't a normal military operation. This was something bigger. Much bigger. Inside the main briefing chamber, dozens of intelligence officers studied giant digital maps. Satellite imagery covered massive screens. Rows of analysts worked without speaking. The atmosphere felt tense. Urgent. Dangerous. A senior intelligence director stepped forward. "We've been tracking a covert organization for almost 15 years. A photograph appeared. Then another. Then another. Explosions. Assassinations. Missing scientists. Stolen weapons. None of the incidents appeared connected. At first. Then the director zoomed out. Every operation formed a pattern. A very deliberate pattern. They call themselves the Directorate. Nobody in the room recognized the name. That was the point. The Directorate wasn't supposed to exist. No public records. No official leadership. No headquarters. Nothing. Ghosts. Professional ghosts. The director continued. 3 weeks ago they captured one of our orbital surveillance assets. The screen changed. Satellite telemetry data filled the room. We believe they're preparing something catastrophic. General Holloway folded his arms. What kind of catastrophic? The director looked directly at him. The director looked directly at him. The kind that starts wars. Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The implications were terrifying. A stolen military satellite could monitor troop movements. Launch systems. Defense networks. Strategic facilities. In the wrong hands, entire nations could be manipulated. Provoked. Destroyed. Then another image appeared. The room became even quieter. A face. A woman. Approximately 50 years old. Silver hair. Sharp eyes. Cold expression. She looked more like a university professor than a criminal mastermind. This is Director Zero. Nobody knew her real name. Nobody knew her nationality. Nobody even knew if Director Zero was a title or an identity. But intelligence agencies worldwide feared her. Because wherever chaos appeared, she appeared first. Then came the revelation nobody expected. One analyst hesitated before speaking. There's something else. The screen changed again. Evelyn immediately froze. The room noticed. The photograph showed a much younger woman. Military uniform. Sniper rifle. Standing beside a training instructor. The instructor's face was familiar. Painfully familiar. Evelyn's eyes widened. Because she knew him. And she hadn't seen him in 15 years. The analyst looked at her carefully. Do you recognize this man? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. The room waited. Finally she nodded. My father. The silence that followed felt endless. General Holloway turned toward her. You never told anyone your father served. Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. He didn't. The analyst slowly shook his head. Actually, he did. Another photograph appeared. Then another. Then another. Classified personnel files. Mission records. Training reports. Documents long buried. Everything pointed to one impossible truth. Evelyn's father had once been part of a secret military unit that officially never existed. A unit specializing in extreme-range reconnaissance and covert operations. The best of the best. Until the entire unit vanished. Without explanation. Without survivors. Or so everyone believed. The analyst swallowed. We recently discovered evidence suggesting several members survived. The screen changed one final time. And every person in the room felt chills. Standing beside Director Zero was a familiar face. Older. Weathered. Scarred. But unmistakable. Evelyn's father. Alive. The world seemed to stop. The room disappeared. The voices disappeared. Everything disappeared. For 15 years she had believed he was dead. Killed during a mission. Lost forever. Now he was standing beside the most dangerous criminal organization on Earth. General Holloway spoke softly. Evelyn. She couldn't answer. Because she didn't know what to feel. Relief. Anger. Confusion. Hope. Fear. All of it collided at once. The director continued the briefing. We believe Director Zero recruited surviving members of that unit years ago. The screen displayed operational timelines. Patterns emerged quickly. Every major directorate's success coincided with the appearance of former special operators. Elite soldiers. Intelligence specialists. Recon experts. People who had supposedly died. The realization horrified everyone. The directorate wasn't merely hiring criminals. It was collecting ghosts. And Evelyn's father might be one of them. 3 days later the operation began. Unlike previous missions, this one would take place far from mountains. Far from deserts. Far from battlefields. The directorate's suspected headquarters was hidden beneath an abandoned industrial city near the Arctic coast. Frozen oceans surrounded it. Violent storms protected it. No roads. No civilians. No witnesses. Perfect. The insertion team arrived under darkness. Snow whipped through the air. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The abandoned city looked haunted. Empty factories towered above frozen streets. Broken windows reflected moonlight. Rusting machinery groaned in the wind. Everything felt dead. Yet Evelyn knew better. Places like this were never truly empty. The team advanced carefully. Thermal scanners detected movement underground. Security systems covered every entrance. Hidden cameras monitored rooftops. The directorate expected visitors. They simply didn't expect these visitors. The assault began at 0200 hours. Explosive charges breached access tunnels. Special operations teams flooded underground corridors. Gunfire echoed through concrete chambers. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed red. The complex erupted into chaos. Room by room they pushed deeper. Resistance was fierce. Professional. Disciplined. These weren't terrorists. These were former military operators. Every fight felt like fighting a mirror image. And then everything changed. Evelyn reached the central command level. A massive steel door slid open. Inside stood Director Zero. Alone. Waiting. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't running. She simply stood there calmly. As if she'd been expecting this moment for years. The soldiers raised their weapons. Director Zero smiled. You're finally here. General Holloway stepped forward. It's over. She laughed softly. No. Then she looked directly at Evelyn. Your father said you'd survive. The words hit harder than any bullet. Where is he? Evelyn demanded. Director Zero's smile faded slightly. He made his choice. Where is he? The woman pointed toward a large observation window. Beyond it lay a frozen airfield. A transport aircraft accelerated across the snow. Preparing for takeoff. And standing near the ramp was her father. Even from hundreds of meters away, Evelyn recognized him instantly. The aircraft began moving. Time was running out. Without waiting for orders, she sprinted. Down corridors. Across platforms. Through emergency exits. The freezing wind struck her face as she burst onto the airfield. The aircraft engines roared. Snow blasted across the runway. Her father turned. And for the first time in 15 years. Their eyes met. Everything stopped. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Then finally he raised one hand. Not in surrender. Not in warning. Just recognition. The aircraft continued accelerating. Evelyn shouted. The wind swallowed her voice. Her father smiled sadly. Then he made a choice. He stepped away from the aircraft. The pilots immediately aborted takeoff. Brakes screamed. Snow exploded beneath the wheels. The soldiers surrounded the area moments later. Weapons ready. Orders shouted. Chaos everywhere. Yet none of it mattered. Because a daughter was standing face to face with the father she thought she'd buried years ago. For several seconds neither could speak. Then he finally said. You became better than I ever was. Evelyn felt tears forming. The words hurt. Because they sounded like goodbye. What happened to you? She whispered. He looked toward the frozen horizon. Bad decisions. Why didn't you come home? His eyes filled with regret. Because every year that passed made it harder. Silence. Painful silence. The kind that only families understand. Then distant explosions echoed from the facility behind them. The directorate was collapsing. Director Zero had escaped. But her organization was finished. Years of secrets were ending. The father looked back toward Evelyn. I can't change the past. No. But maybe you can forgive it someday. Tears rolled down her cheeks. For the first time in years, the legendary sniper looked vulnerable. Human. Just a daughter standing before her father. And somehow that required more courage than any battlefield ever had. Months later, after countless investigations, the directorate officially ceased to exist. Its networks collapsed. Its resources were seized. Its secrets exposed. Director Zero vanished without a trace. Some believed she died. Others believed she escaped. Nobody knew for certain. As for Evelyn's father, he spent the rest of his life helping authorities dismantle what remained of the organization. Quietly. Without attention. Without excuses. Trying to make peace with mistakes he could never fully erase. One evening, long after the operation ended, Evelyn stood alone overlooking a mountain range glowing beneath a setting sun. The same kind of mountains where her legend began. The wind moved gently across the cliffs. For once there was no mission. No target. No danger. Just silence. The good kind. The peaceful kind. Behind her, General Holloway approached slowly. Retired now. Older. Grayer. But still smiling. You know, he said, when you first arrived, I thought you were the wrong person for the job. Evelyn laughed softly. I remember. The general shook his head. Biggest mistake of my career. They stood together watching the sunset. Then Holloway asked. What are you going to do next? Evelyn thought about it. The impossible shots. The missions. The battles. The years spent carrying responsibilities few people could imagine. Then she smiled. A genuine smile. Rare. Earned. Maybe teach. The general laughed. Future snipers. She nodded. Someone taught me. The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. And for the first time in a very long time, The future didn't feel like another battlefield. It felt like hope. Because legends eventually become stories. Stories become lessons. And lessons become the foundation for those who come after. The general once mocked a quiet sniper because he couldn't see her worth. Years later, entire generations would study her achievements. Not because of impossible shots. Not because of medals. Not because of records. But because she proved something far more important. True strength doesn't need recognition. True greatness doesn't demand attention. And true warriors never stop serving others, even after the battles are won. As darkness settled across the mountains, Evelyn Carter took one final look at the horizon. Then she turned and walked forward. Not toward another war. But toward a new beginning. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.